One quiet afternoon, you sit by the window, listening to the gentle sound of rain tapping on the rooftop, and suddenly, a question arises in your heart. Where do I come from? Not because someone asked you, not because you're reading a philosophy book, but because, in that moment of stillness, you feel that life is holding a deep mystery own. You may have never truly paused long enough to listen to. How many times have you appeared on this earth? Why are you and not someone else? Why were you born into this particular family, this land, with this body and this mind? Buddhism doesn't rush to answer these questions with theories. The Buddha, out of deep compassion and insight, often remained silent in response to metaphysical inquiries, not because he didn't know, but because he wanted us to see for ourselves, with the eyes of mindfulness and the heart of awakening. He didn't give us a fixed definition of human origin. Instead, he offered us a path to return to ourselves, to look deeply and recognize who we truly are in this vast web of interbeing between body, mind, and the universe. This video is a gentle invitation to pause, to breathe deeply, and to reflect on this ancient question in the light of the Buddha's teachings and the quiet rhythm of our own lives. It is a small offering from the TT-Buddhism channel, where we share early Buddhist teachings and meditation practices in a simple, practical, and heartfelt way. We invite you to stay with us until the end of the video, because perhaps the answer you've been seeking isn't found in words, but in one silent moment of truly listening to yourself. If this question has ever stirred something within you, please share your reflection in the comments. And if you find the video meaningful, we warmly invite you to like, subscribe, and continue walking with us on this path of understanding and love. Part 1. Some questions are not meant to be answered right away. Dear friend, along the path of contemplation, there are questions that cannot be answered with words. And sometimes, what we need is not an immediate answer, but a way to live more deeply with the question itself. There is a well-known story. In the Agivakagata Sutta, a seeker named Vacchagotta came to the Buddha and asked a series of metaphysical questions. Is the world eternal or not? Does the self continue after death or not? Is there a first beginning to human life? To each of these, the Buddha remained silent. That silence was not ignorance. It was a profound act of wisdom. The Buddha then offered a simple but powerful parable. He said, "Suppose a man is struck by a poisoned arrow. His friends rush to help him, but he insists, 'I will not let this arrow be removed until I know who shot it, what caste he belonged to, what kind of bow he used, what kind of wood the shaft was made from, what type of poison was on the tip.' By the time all his questions are answered, the man would already be dead." Likewise, the Buddha said, "Some questions do not lead to freedom from suffering. They may stir the intellect, but they do not bring peace. If we insist on answering them before we heal, we risk missing the very medicine we need." This doesn't mean the Buddha rejected the question, "Where do I come from?" He never discouraged inquiry, but he gently redirected it toward the present moment, toward our lived experience. Are you suffering now, or are you at peace? Do you truly understand yourself? Can you live each moment deeply, freely, and with clarity? Because even if we knew the origin of the universe, what good would it do if we remain caught in craving, fear, and confusion? The Buddha didn't give us an answer. He offered us a mirror to look deeply into ourselves and see that our true origin is not a moment in history, but a continuation of body, mind, and karma. The question, where do I come from, is not closed. It is simply transformed into a path of mindfulness, where we no longer seek the answer outside, but begin to recognize it within. Part 2. The universe and human life. Without beginning, without end. Dear friend, we often assume that everything must have a beginning. A seed is sown, a river has a source, and so, the question, where do I come from, feels natural, even logical. But when you sit quietly, breathing in and out mindfully, and look deeply into the nature of life, you may begin to touch a truth that transcends beginnings and endings. You may encounter a wisdom the Buddha offered more than 2,500 years ago, that life has no discoverable starting point. In the Anamitagga Sutta, the Buddha said, "Bhikkhus, this samsara is without a discoverable beginning. A first point is not seen of beings roaming and wandering on, hindered by ignorance and fettered by craving." The Buddha did not say this to confuse or discourage us. On the contrary, he was inviting us to expand our way of seeing. If there is no fixed starting point, there is no fixed self. We are not static beings created once, and forever we are a stream of body, mind, and karmic momentum, continually unfolding through conditions. To help his disciples understand the unimaginable length of samsara, the Buddha offered a humble and beautiful image in the Paṭicca Sutta. Imagine, monks, a great solid mountain, 1 yojana in length and breadth. Every 100 years, a man strokes it once with a fine piece of cloth. That great mountain would be worn down and eliminated sooner than the time it takes for beings to wander through samsara. Imagine that a mountain worn down by silk over eons. And yet, the Buddha said, we have roamed in samsara even longer than that. Modern science tells us that the universe began with a Big Bang around 13.8 billion years ago. But physicists themselves acknowledge they do not know what came before that. Some theories propose that the universe expands, contracts, and expands again, a cyclical model that mirrors the teachings of the Buddha. In the Aggañña Sutta, the Buddha described a cosmic rhythm. There comes a time, Vasetta, when after a very long time, this world contracts. At that time, beings are mostly reborn in the Abhisara Brahma world, and there comes a time, after a very long time, when this world expands again. Then, beings pass away from the Abhisara world and reappear here. Husli, pass by, end, I, al, I, end, by, peep, end. This is the Buddhist vision of cosmic cycles: formation, duration, dissolution, and then renewal. One kalpa, great eon, is not a measurable number of years. It is the deep inhalation and exhalation of the universe itself. And you, me, all beings way arise and fall within that breath. And within each cycle, beings continue to reappear according to their own karma. We are not created from nothing by a supreme being. Rather, it is our own intentional actions, karma, that shape our present form, our circumstances, and even the quality of our consciousness. A newborn child is not a blank slate. That baby is a continuation of ancestors, of past lives, of past actions still bearing fruit. We are not separate from the world. We are not accidents of matter. We are the interbeing of countless causes and conditions, just as a lotus arises from sunlight, mud, and stillness. In the Samuppāda Sutta, the Buddha gave another striking example. He said, "Suppose, monks, a man were to collect a mustard seed every time he remembered a past life in which he had a mother. The pile of mustard seeds would be larger than the earth itself. You have had countless mothers. You have been born and died more times than there are stars in the sky. And perhaps the person sitting beside you today was once your child, your sibling, your beloved. To understand this is to soften, to stop clinging so tightly to the one life you think is you, to begin to cherish the present moment as something precious, sacred, and endlessly connected." Dear friend, when you ask, "Where do I come from?" Buddhism does not give you a specific place or a point in time. Instead, it gently invites you to look at what is happening right now. You are breathing. You are continuing. You are part of an endless flow of life, birth, death, rebirth, not with a beginning, not with an end, but with presence. And so perhaps the real question is not, "Where do I come from?" but "Where am I going? How am I living in this very moment?" Because here, now, with each breath, you are not only continuing your past, you are also planting the seeds of your future. Part 3. The first beings. Light, born, mind, made. Dear friend, have you ever looked up at the stars scattered across the night sky and wondered, what was I before I had this body? The answer may not lie in scientific formulas or philosophical theories, but in a gentle and ancient story the Buddha once shared in the Origination Sutta. In this discourse, the Buddha spoke not of creation by divine will or a cosmic accident, but of the unfolding of the world through consciousness and karma. At the beginning of a new world cycle, when the universe was forming again after a long dissolution, beings descended from the Abhasara Brahma realm, the radiant world of light. These were not physical beings. They were mind-made, self-luminous, free of form, free of gender, and not dependent on food. They lived by delight, a pure inner joy, and moved effortlessly through space. In the Buddha's words, when the world expands again, beings reappear from the Abhasara world. They are mind-made, self-luminous, feeding on joy, and they abide in this way for a long time. 9. There was no conflict among them, no comparison, no pride, because there was no self to cling to, no form to divide by. They were light and they were free. And then something very small happened. A delicate layer of earth essence appeared on the surface of the newly forming earth. It was fragrant and sweet, with a soft glow. One being, moved by curiosity, tasted it. Just one small moment of wanting, of grasping, set everything into motion. This was the beginning of craving. Some beings thought, "Oh, this earth essence is delicious," and they began to eat it. As they consumed it, their inner light faded, and their bodies became heavier and more solid. Differences in appearance began to arise. From that first act of grasping, They became dependent on the material, moving further away from the inner joy that once sustained them. Their bodies grew coarse. The once uniform light faded. Differences in size, shape, and appearance became visible, and with that, conceit and comparison arose. Where there is comparison, envy follows. Where there is envy, division begins. As physical forms took shape, hands, feet, faces, gender also emerged. Initially androgynous, beings slowly became distinctly male or female. With this, sexual desire appeared. At first, their actions were not considered shameful, but as more and more beings observed, shame and concealment arose, and from this, social norms and moral codes began to form. None of this was imposed by an external god. It was all the natural unfolding of mind and karma, from light to form, from internal joy to external dependence, from unity to separation, from freedom to attachment and suffering. This was not just a biological evolution, it was a spiritual descent, a movement from spacious awareness into dense matter, fueled by craving and ignorance. The Buddha did not tell this story as a historical account, but as a mirror to reflect what happens in our own hearts, in every moment. When your mind is still luminous, you don't need to chase anything. But when your mind reaches out craving taste, beauty, sensation, the inner light dims. You begin to feel lack. You begin to need. You begin to compare and grasp. And so, the descent doesn't begin with society. It begins with a single moment of forgetfulness. We, modern humans, carry physical bodies, fragile and intricate, but we also carry within us a distant memory of light and joy. Though hidden beneath layers of conditioning, the essence of those original beings is still alive in us. It flickers in every mindful breath, in every peaceful step, in every act of compassion. To practice mindfulness, to live simply, to let go of craving, this is not about being good or moral in a rigid sense. It is a path of returning to the inner light, to the joy that is not dependent on anything outside, to a heart unburdened by comparison or grasping. And when you eat a bowl of rice without attachment, listen to music without being swept away, see someone beautiful without wanting to possess, then, for that moment, you are living again as one of those radiant beings of old. You are not falling. You are remembering. Part 4. How society was born and how the heart must evolve. Dear friend, in the early days, as human beings began to take form and live side by side, something shifted. We drew closer to one another, not just for protection, but for belonging, for shared purpose, for connection. And so, the first communities came into being. At first, life was simple. There were no laws, no property, no mine or yours. But as resources became scarce, land, food, space, the idea of ownership slowly arose, and with it, the seeds of comparison, conflict, and division were planted. To live together peacefully, people began to establish agreements. Language became more precise. Rules were made. Roles were assigned. Eventually, the community chose a leader not by force, but by consensus. The first leader was called Mahasammata, meaning the great elect, chosen by the people to maintain harmony and fairness. The Buddha shared this story not to criticize society, but to show that it was a natural unfolding of collective conditions, an echo of our karma playing out over time. As communities grew, so did our problems. Structure led to separation, laws led to loopholes, possessions led to greed, power led to control, and so the need for moral clarity arose. People began to sense something deeply true. If we all lived by self-interest alone, chasing after pleasure, wealth, or status, our world would slowly unravel. From that realization, a new kind of human began to appear. These were the ones who looked inward instead of outward. They weren't interested in climbing social ladders. They were searching for stillness, for truth, for awakening. They became sages, contemplatives, wanderers not necessarily religious, but deeply rooted in presence. They practiced mindfulness. They cultivated compassion. They walked quietly through the world not to escape it, but to understand it more deeply. This, the Buddha taught, is true human evolution. Not just smarter tools or better systems, but a more awakened heart. Today, we are still living in society, and we always will, but we can choose not to be swept away by it. We can practice right where we are at home, at work, in conversation, when you listen without needing to be right, when you pause before reacting in anger, when you let go of needing to win. In those moments, you are evolving. Society, then, becomes a spiritual field. Every marketplace, every relationship, every office or dinner table becomes a place to plant seeds of understanding, of kindness, of awakening. This is how we grow not only as individuals, but as a species, not by building bigger cities, but by building a more spacious heart. Part 5. You are not here by accident. One day, the Buddha turned to the monks and asked, "Monks, is it easy or difficult to be born as a human being?" They replied, "Venerable Sir, it is very difficult." The Buddha nodded. "Indeed, it is extremely difficult." And then he offered a powerful image. Imagine a blind turtle living at the bottom of the vast ocean. It surfaces only once every 100 years. Floating on the surface of that ocean is a single wooden yoke with a small hole. The chance that the blind turtle rises at just the right time and places its head through that hole is still greater than the chance of being born as a human. You might smile and then fall silent, because somehow the story goes beyond the mind. It touches something deep in the heart. It tells us that this life, your life, is not random. You are living in a human body. That is not a coincidence. You have enough clarity to understand the Dharma, enough sensitivity to feel others' pain, enough stability to sit, breathe, and look deeply into yourself. You can listen to the Buddha's teachings. You can walk mindfully. You can choose to respond with understanding instead of reacting from habit. You can learn to love without clinging. You can live without being swept away. All these are things that most beings in the cycle of birth and death cannot do. According to Buddhist cosmology, even heavenly beings, though blissful, are often too distracted by pleasure to practice. And those in the lower realms, animal, hungry ghost, or hell, are too overwhelmed by suffering or ignorance to listen, reflect, and transform. Only in the human realm is there just enough of both, suffering and insight. This unique balance makes human life the most fertile ground for awakening. That's why the Buddha said, being born human is extremely rare, not just in numbers, but in opportunity. How many lifetimes have you lived? In how many forms? You have been someone, somewhere many times over. Perhaps as a celestial being, perhaps as an ant, a bird, a ghost, wandering, hungry, and lost. You have wept in loneliness. You have burned in rage. You have run through birth and death 1,000 times. And today, you are sitting here with a mind that can ask, who am I? What am I truly doing with this life? That question is the most precious seed you've ever planted. So, stop for a moment. Place your hand gently on your heart. Feel the warmth, feel the pulse of life, and whisper softly to yourself, thank you, life. Thank you, ancestors. Thank you, causes and conditions that allowed me to be here. I will not waste this precious chance. Being human is not a finish line. It is a crossroads. One path leads to more reactivity, more craving, more forgetfulness. The other path leads to mindfulness, understanding, and freedom. And you have the power to choose. You don't have to become a monk. You don't have to live in the forest. You just need to live awake right where you are, to come back to your breath, to listen to the bell in your heart, to know that each mindful moment is a step toward liberation. You are not here by accident. You are the continuation of many lifetimes of longing for clarity and love. And if you know how to cherish this human life, to cultivate mindfulness, compassion, and insight, then this very life will not pass by like a fleeting dream. It will become an awakening, right in the heart of this samsaric sea. Part 6. How to live in alignment with this wondrous origin. If you have ever been still enough to truly feel the question, where do I come from? Then the next step is not about finding a theoretical answer. It is an invitation to live more deeply, more mindfully. For understanding our origin is not about knowing. It is about living in a way that honors its mystery and sacredness. In the Buddha's teaching, we are gently invited to come back to our body and mind in the present moment. When you breathe in and know that you are breathing in, when you take a step with your full awareness in that very moment, you are no longer distant from your origin. You have come home. You are touching the living stream that has flowed through countless lives before you. You don't need to imagine the beginning of the universe or trace your karmic map through past births. This very breath, this very step, this quiet gaze, they are your true continuation. And more than that, you are also continuing the stream of life for those who will come after you. Every action you take, every word you speak, every thought you nourish is a seed you are planting in the field of your consciousness. Karma is not some mystical force judging you from afar. Karma is simply cause and effect your own doing, returning to you. You are not merely born from conditions. You are also creating new conditions each day. In this way, you are not only someone who has been born, you are also giving birth to yourself, moment by moment, through every mindful or mindless act. And so, we see that we don't need to know exactly what happened at the beginning of time. We don't need to define who or what brought us here. What matters most is, how am I living now? Am I speaking words that bring healing or harm? Am I thinking with a heart full of kindness or judgment? Am I walking through this world like someone who has once been lost and is now slowly finding their way back home? The Buddha did not encourage endless speculation about metaphysical questions, not because he rejected them, but because he saw that there was a more wondrous path: to live deeply in the present moment. When you live with awareness, every step becomes a return to your roots. Every breath becomes a bridge between this body and the vast lineage of lives that continue in you. And every mindful moment becomes fertile soil where the flower of freedom can bloom. Living this way, you no longer need to search for an answer. You have become the answer. Dear friend, we have just walked together through a journey of contemplation, from the question, where do I come from, to the ancient Buddhist sutras, from a universe without a starting point, to the luminous beings at its dawn, from the formation of human society, to the rare and precious chance of being born as a human, and finally, to the path of mindful living that helps us return to our deepest origin. Perhaps you still don't have a definitive answer. And that's perfectly okay, because in the Buddha's teaching, wisdom does not always arise from knowing everything, but from the ability to live deeply with what we do not yet know. The question, where do I come from, doesn't need to be resolved with definitions. It can become an invitation to a new way of living, one in which each breath, each decision, and each step is embraced as a continuation of many lifetimes. You are not here by accident. You are the result of countless causes and conditions, and you are also creating the conditions for what comes next. If you have reflections, insights, or questions after watching this video, please share them in the comments below. We deeply value your presence and your voice like gentle drops of rain, nourishing the forest of understanding and compassion. Thank you for being here and for listening with your whole heart. If you found this video meaningful, please click like and subscribe to the TT-Buddhism channel so we can continue walking this path of awareness together. May you find peace in each moment of returning to yourself.